I have read many fanfic that are much better written than Digimon 2020.
Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on.
Run. Welcome to Podages, your critically nostalgic analytical tour for Digimon anime. I'm Jeff Ruberg. This week we're discussing Digimon Adventure 2020, episode 31, A New Darkness, Millenniumon. And for my guest this week, I'm excited to welcome back Vrai Kasier, managing editor at Anime Feminist and co-host of the Trash and Treasures podcast. How's it going, Vrai?
Hey, Jeff. It's premiere season, so that's how I'm doing. So I'm tired.
I'm sure watching a bunch of new, exciting, fresh anime makes this Digimon Adventure season seem even more fresh and exciting, doesn't it?
Yes, no, it's wonderful, and I definitely did not watch it with my phone on at all. It's a very good show that's consistently engaging. This show makes me sad, Jeff.
So you were last on episode 24, which was... What was going on there? Was that done, Devimon?
That was the end of the Devimon fight, yeah.
Right. So how have you felt about the show in general since then?
Sad. Like, legitimately sad. It's because, I feel like this is the kind of show that doesn't scream, this is not a GoHands production. It doesn't make me feel like nobody cared, although I'm sure somebody at GoHands cares about the shows, the bad shows that they're making. But I think, like Toya mentioned before, this, you can tell that especially the key animators are really pouring their hearts into this, and I do hope they get some good work off the back of some of these cuts in their portfolios. And like, the music is good and the voice actors are comfortable in their roles. They know how to do this like with their eyes closed, and the writing is just so aggressively bad. It's just painfully sad. And watching this was like, not only am I watching premieres for new shows, though whatever, that's a mixed bag every year, but I recently finished binging Akudama Drive and School Live with my wife, and it was wonderful, and we sat on our couch and we cried, and I thought, wow, anime is beautiful. Anime is a wonderful art form. And then I had to catch up on 4 or 5 backlog episodes of Digimon 2020, and I thought to myself, is Digimon good? Did I lie to myself about Digimon being good? And we're all just combining into a collective delusion here. I know that the old shows are good. It's fine, but like, it's very sad to me that I legitimately had that thought for a moment.
Yeah, I think that the show definitely makes you think those thoughts. For me too. Like it. Like you were saying, the voice actors know how to do it with their eyes closed, and I'm like, that's what it feels like with the writing. Just, it's like the show is, just feels like everything is fully operational aside from like this one key component.
I will say that, like, I am aggressively not a battle shonen guy. Although, every time I say that, it'll be like, well, but I did binge all of Chainsaw Man the other week. And, like, occasionally I'll pick one up, but by and large, long runner shonen titles are just not for me, and I have never really understood that culture once I was no longer a teenager. But keeping up with this for the podcast, because I genuinely enjoy listening to you guys talk about it, gave me a certain amount of sympathy for that sunk cost community relationship element of why people continue to watch bad shows. I was going to say it makes sense of why people stuck with Darling in the Franxx until the end, but that's unfair because Digimon 2020 isn't actively hateful, it's just bad.
Yeah, that's the sad comparison.
No, it's more like people who are still reading One Piece. It's fine. You know what, you should probably cut that. I don't want people on my doorstep. I don't want the One Piece stands.
Do you actually want me to cut that out?
I don't care. I really don't. Come at me. Don't.
I mean, now that you mention One Piece, I'm like, oh no, but One Piece is still good. And I'm like, but is it though?
Is it, or are you grading it on a curve because you've loved it for a decade and you made all these friends who also loved it back when it was good?
I mean, I got into One Piece only recently, like a couple of years ago, so I don't have that like nostalgia, but it is mainly for the community that I still read it at this point. I think especially coming into it with new eyes, having not been into it for over a decade, like the time skip in One Piece happened like over a decade ago in our publishing time. And there have been like things that the characters did during the time skip that you think would be obvious questions to ask them, once you see them again for the first time in
Right.
however many years it was. And 10 years later, they still have not talked about it. And it's like, these characters have still not had a chance to talk. And it's like, it's in that sense reminds me a lot of Adventure 2020 because it's like, but at least in One Piece, it's not because no one's talking. It's because there's like 50 other things on screen, on panel. There's just like all these things happening, so they can't talk about things. But yeah, it's a similar vibe. Like just let the character development happen, and it's not. Now I'm the one who feels bad that I am hating on One Piece too much, and I should cut this out. But
Oh no.
now I'm like, is this fair? I don't know.
Anyway, Digimon, I'm so sorry, fandom. I'm so sorry. You deserve a good and nice thing.
Yeah, I still think that even as disappointing as the show is, it's not like the lowest point of Digimon. So it's still, from a fandom perspective, like there's so much more stuff happening Digimon related these days
Mhm.
than in the past. So it's like it's not all bad.
So it's not like there was nothing and you finally had the chance to have a new installment and oh no, the one hope that was supposed to fix everything is a bad.
Yeah,
The card game seems to be going well for folks. That's good.
yeah, I hope so. I'm a little bit worried that it's like the English release is like happening way too quickly. Like there's like a giant booster set coming out at the end of this month, and then next month there's another giant booster set, and it's like there's no way to actually play the game yet because we can't do things in person. What is there to do? But yeah, I think especially because like there was a lot of fatigue with Adventure going into the season. I think a lot of people in the fandom, at least with my sensibilities, didn't really expect much of the show. If Digimon
Right.
had been on hiatus for like 5+ years and then it's like it finally came back, then yeah, I think what you're saying it would be disappointing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I still haven't gotten a chance to watch it because it's annoyingly difficult to find streaming. But I mean, Last Evolution Kizuna was really satisfying, right? So that's at least a good thing.
yeah. I keep forgetting that also was there recently. The confusing timeline of it almost coming out in English, then not coming out, then coming out eventually, and then yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right, let's dive into this week's episode. Episode 31, A New Darkness Millenniumon, aka Going Commando, oh, aka Lopsided Info Dump, aka Once You Lop, the Fun Don't Stop. My goal with these titles is that, like, if they ever do a dub, that I want at least one of the titles I come up with to actually be used as the dub title inadvertently. Like, not because of plagiarism, just because.
No, I want them to call you up and say this was so brilliant. We must add it to the lore. You deserve that at this point.
Uh, it wouldn't be the worst thing to be glorified for a terrible pun.
My memory of the Digimon dub is that it functions 60% on terrible puns, so you're really just leaning into the spirit of the thing.
Yeah, so just a general warning, like every week, we're going to be talking about everything in the Crunchyroll episode, including the title and preview for next week, and everything in the original adventure. But we won't be talking about titles or text synopses for things past next week, or any of, if we talk about any of their seasons, then we'll give you a spoiler warning. This is, I guess, relevant because recently there were the titles for episodes 32 through 35 and synopses released for those. And I think Ryan and I might talk about the titles at the end of the episode, but it'll be like the very last thing. It'll give you a warning before we get into it. So if you want to be spoiler free, that is an option. So yeah, so this episode, what happens? Lopmon wakes up and starts doing a prophecy thing. Bakuman try to interrupt, but Lopmon starts giving them visions while they're running. And in the visions, we find out that Millenniumon was the big bad before, not fully eliminated. Angelmon and Angelwomon fought alongside six warriors. While that's going on, Kushiro realizes the ISS is going to fall into Tokyo because, of course, it's always Tokyo. Sora fights against a Bakuman who evolved into a Phantomon. Taichi fights against some Metal Phantomon that evolved into Gokumon. Because, of course, Sora's enemies only get paid 78 cents on the dollar of Taichi's enemies. But Lopmon activates some giant dog buses, sends them after everyone, and then Lopmon, I guess, reveals to Taichi that Hikari is the chosen child. Yeah, what were your impressions of this episode, Rai?
At least when Sailor Moon made Tokyo the center of the universe, it did bother to come up with the excuse that it was because they all happened to show up there. Digimon is just, well, I shouldn't say that because they haven't been able to think past, and then the world will explode, and also somebody will get a scraped knee. Like, the escalation is comical on that side of the plot at this point.
Yeah, like, it's one thing if the kids were there in Tokyo, and it's like, okay, maybe you can assume that they're being targeted or something, but at this point, it's just like, I could just see them thinking. I mean, who knows if there's a writer's room or there's like a main script writer who envisioned this, but like I could see them being like, okay, well, this could hit anywhere in the world, but if it lands in, for example, South America, the kids won't care if they're in Japan, so let's make it Japan, like because it has to be Tokyo for it to be relevant.
Yeah. I thought those first 3 episodes were good at this balancing of the immediate danger and then having Koshiro and Takaru and everybody else in Tokyo. And it was a fun mini OVA that people could still probably watch and maybe the only thing we don't disown when this whole mess is over. But now it's like it feels compelled to keep doing that as opposed to literally any other way to keep that charade going. Like, heck, even if they had decided to keep some of the other kids in Tokyo, because, they're back in the digital world right now, but they might as well not be, because they're not really getting to do anything exciting while the Taichi show is going on, so you could have done some comedy bits where they're trying to keep in contact and also, oh no, we have to construct increasingly elaborate excuses why these kids aren't around, but actually everything is fine and we're all having sleepovers. Don't worry about it, Mom and Dad. But this is Digimon 2020, and there are no comedy bits, only sadness.
Yeah, we get comedy bits in the Digimon Analyzer, and that's about it.
I look forward to that segment like a dying man. It's not even that it's funny, it's just that it's trying. That's all I ask.
This week's one was really good, though.
I liked that one a lot, where Agumon popping in to talk about how extremely cool how his big boy pants are. Like, I was charmed. This is charming. It's like they have become an outgrowth of the ending theme, which continues to be the best part of the show.
Yep.
But I think it was Toya who said that this show feels a lot like a video game, and my god, I couldn't get it out of my head watching this episode. It feels exactly like bad video game adaptation anime that I've seen. Like, oh no, we're running to our place and getting exposition, and this would be the cutscene in between our battle stages, and now we have to stop on the way to get rid of these trash mobs, and here's the big boss, and we need to hold him off for this amount of time so that the NPC you're escorting can awaken the next plot device. It's everything made sense.
Yeah, I've been thinking a bit while playing Final Fantasy XIV recently about how silly, like how almost all video games are just like blatant wish fulfillment fantasies, where it's just like in the context of the universe, you end up being like by the end of the game like the most powerful thing in the world through just like the things that you're actually doing as the player are like usually fairly easy gameplay stuff that like a kid can do for like 10 hours and then you become the most powerful person in the universe. It's like fundamentally an extreme wish fulfillment. And that's what this kind of reminds me of. That's like by the end it's like, wow, Taichi has grown so much, and it's like, did he grow, or like was there just a person at the controller just pushing forward for 30 episodes? And
he punched the hardest that he's ever punched before. There's been plenty of people who've talked. I think Jim Sterling did a whole episode on it about how games, not to say there aren't games with wonderful stories, but games tend to have lower standards for what can count as good storytelling because there is that interactive element and so many other parts that contribute to the overarching whole. And I feel like, I don't know that this wouldn't be a good story if it had, the running and battle sequences in between it that were player controlled, but you would look at it and go, this is okay. I mean, look, it felt so great to play and I had so much fun.
Yeah, I guess the big thing that happened this episode is the
expo dump.
Yeah, the big exposition dump. But I'm just thinking that when I went to gather like for each episode, I go and gather screenshots to use for like title cards and things for the podcast, and also and GIFs to use for social media. Mm-hmm. And usually in an episode, I have like at least 5 GIFs that are like interesting bits of animation. Mm-hmm. This episode, I was scraping the bottom of the barrel to get 2 because I was like, even though there was a fight with War Greymon, which again just happened, but anyway, another fight with War Greymon. It was like there was barely any interesting animation. Actually, one of the 2 GIFs I got was just I got because it was just Lopmon floating, and I could easily loop it because the trees just keep looping forever. But like, so yeah, there was no interesting animation. There was no interesting character interactions. There was just Lopmon telling them things.
The War Greymon thing was a bummer too, because we have literally just built up that this is a super difficult evolution to attain, and it takes a bunch of energy. But don't worry, Agumon, we had this leaf full of oranges ready to go for you, so we can go ahead and spam this ultimate attack again. Your limit break is repaired.
Yeah, I didn't even realize. Yeah, now that they mention it, they totally did just like explain away how they can do it again by having the Woodmon just like drop off some fruit, and then there you go. There, that explained it. Like, especially in the middle of the episode, I was thinking, like, at the point where we saw Metal Greymon facing off against Gokumon, and I was like, they can't have Greymon come back again so soon, right? And then I was like, it could be the premiere of Garudamon's evolution to Mega. That could happen.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been frustrating for other reasons if it wasn't like given focus, or like it was the episode was titled after the info dump, and then they kind of glossed over the fact that her premiere happened in the middle of it.
Right.
But instead, it was like I feel like she was only there because this was supposed to parallel the info dump in episode like 5 or 6, where it was also Taichi and Sora.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally know what you mean, though. Like, the mark in me heard about, oh my god, everybody else is going to get Mega Evolutions. I can't wait to see what that looks like. And like, for a minute, I was excited. And I also thought, well, clearly we've set up that Agumon won't be able to become War Greymon so soon, so maybe this is Sora's episode after all, and my bar has just become so low that I wasn't even prepared to be angry at her not getting a whole focus episode. I just thought, maybe Garudamon's Mega Evolution will get, like, a whole detailed animation sequence, and I was prepared to be happy with that, because, and then it didn't happen! And then the next episode preview is a Sora being protected by the 4-year-old. Because standards are for losers.
I hope that's better in context. I hope that's like a silly moment that isn't like the big dramatic important thing, but I'm worried.
Jeff, search your feelings. Jeff, what's actually going to happen?
I know it to be true. Yeah.
I mean, I liked Sora's cool rescue moment a couple of episodes ago. Again, we're grading on a curve. I thought that was neat. But yeah, it's just, of course it didn't come to anything. Of course it didn't.
Yeah, I was prepared for it to be like, if Sora upstages Yamato by coming before Yamato, that'll be like the best thing that could ever happen to Sora in this reboot. Even if she doesn't get this episode, even if she doesn't get character development, just going before Yamato like would be amazing. But
mind blown.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even hated all this info dump stuff necessarily. I would have dinged it in a better show because this is a lot of telling, not showing, when it feels like with the ability to beam directly into the kids' minds, you could do so much more in terms of them like inhabiting Lopmon's position and like feeling these emotions of the battle going on and like the terror and the desperation. And there have been really cool shonen flashback style episodes that do stuff like that that I've enjoyed. But even if it had been like this and come earlier in the show, I probably would have forgiven it for at least moving things along. But we faffed around with so much nonsense that's just combat scene after combat scene that at this point I'm like, okay, you remembered that there needs to be another lore dump now to get to the next set of mini bosses. Fine.
Yeah, and for me it's the fact that like I'm glad that we got finally some more info dump, but that it's basically exactly what everyone could have guessed from the last one in like 25 episodes ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, remember in like episode 6 when everybody was really excitedly trying to figure out the various silhouettes?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I'm just thinking back to how it felt early, like that info dump early on felt exciting because it was like, if this is what they're revealing early on, like there's so much runtime, they're going to reveal so much more. And like, it's going to be, like it seemed like that was going to be our initial impression. And then eventually we were going to get more information. Like it was going to, our understanding would have changed. But instead it's like, 25 episodes later, our impression has not changed. It's just they expanded the camera a little bit more until we get confirmation of exactly what everyone expected. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and it's like Millenniumon as a villain is, I'm putting my expectations pretty low because it seems like Millenniumon is literally just there to be an intimidating character design. Doesn't seem like there's any more to it.
Yeah, before the new episode came out, I was going to ask you, Jeff, did you bring me on because I would be the least despairingly angry about Millenniumon? Because all I know is that it's that Digimon nobody likes that is connected to that character nobody likes in Tamers, and also Ken's brother is involved somehow, and WonderSwan games. Have I gotten it all?
Yeah, I actually don't remember how Ken's brother's involved now that I think about it. I think it's mainly Ken.
Oh.
Because like a bunch of the WonderSwan games, it's like Ken and Rio are the like tag team. Uh, now, now that you mention it, like there is that whole point in 02 where it's like, oh no, actually your brother was intended to be the one, not you. So I'm not sure how that plays into it. But
If they bring Ken into this mess, I will lose my mind.
if he's just there as a character design and has no character and no
I
personality,
will lose my mind. Please don't do that to my son. I take back everything I said in previous episodes about including the 02 kids. Please. Please go back to ignoring them, franchise.
the thing is, like, the reason people hate Millennium, which I don't think it's everyone. I think some people were genuinely excited for him to be here and stuff because he is like. I think the things that make him frustrating are what make him interesting, in that he's this like big franchise spanning thing that it's at least interesting how he's franchise spanning, but also non-existent in the anime or like just in the background for like a scene, and that's I at least admire the like sloppiness of it.
Right, no, that's kind of interesting, like potentially.
Yeah, I think it's really just that the execution is terrible. Like it's just that it's very much a fanfic level writing where like the adventure story exists and then it's like, okay, how do we one up this in a video game? And then I don't think that even in the original anime like in 02 or Tamers, I don't think it would have been terrible to introduce Millenniumon in those worlds if it were just executed better. And so but anyway, like the things that Millenniumon in this iteration, it seems like there's none of that. It seems like it's just the thing that I think is the coolest about Millenniumon is that there's like a time loop that makes no sense, but is vaguely inspired by the fact that it's based on the Y2K bug, and it seems like in this version it's just a big bad enemy. But I maybe shouldn't be jumping to conclusions because we haven't seen any of that, and there's a possibility of all that. But I'm also trying to not get my hopes up. So
yeah, optimism. Although, Jeff, I gotta say to you, I have read many fanfic that are much better written than Digimon 2020.
Yeah, I shouldn't compare it to that.
But yeah, it's that is extra sad because that is the kind of underutilized character that you think would be great for a reboot like this. Like that's ideally what reboots and remakes do, is they take these kind of poorly handled or untouched elements of established series and they put a new light on it. And it's so exciting to see it in this new context. The Woman Called Fujiko Mine is great and it exists. But it seems like you said, everything, all the context I have seeing the monster so far in the show is it's just a big monster. And that's too bad.
Yeah, like what I'm worried about is that they, in deciding what villain to pick for the show, that they just, had 2 slots to fill, Devimon and Millenniumon, and for Devimon picked like a popularity contest, what's like iconic villain from Adventure, and then saw that Iotasmon was the top of the list, and then we're like, doesn't really work. Let's go to Devimon instead. And then for the second slot from Millenniumon, this doesn't actually exist, but I'm imagining like going to Wikimon and sorting by power level, and then just taking them on the top of the list, being like, okay, that's the villain.
Is Millenniumon, I get like some kind of prominent card set in the new card game? Because that seems to have, previous decisions in this show seem to have been connected to how that new release is shaking out.
I think Millenniumon's there, but not super prominent. Not like Omegamon, which I don't know if we would talk about this in the show, so I'm not sure if you've heard about it. But like, it's not just that Omegamon is like on the cover of like the card sets. Not just that Omegamon is like the most expensive card to buy if you're buying singles now. There's an entire set, like one of the new sets in Japan is like named after Omegamon. It's like a bunch of Omegamon variants. So it's just like,
wow, incredible.
Yeah, it's milking that Omegamon for always worth.
Oh, joke.
One moment I thought was really interesting in this episode is when is it? When in the scheme of things, when it's like Lopmon, I guess. Do we see Lopmon waking up? We see Patamon reacting to Lopmon, and then Scoldamon also reacting.
Yeah, that somebody left a comment about that, right? Where it's where we set the flags as obviously as possible, and I agree. By the way,
Yeah, if they don't pay that off now, and it turns out to be a completely different Digimon that is Gatomon or Tailmon, that'll be a little bit weird. But
I mean, that was the cool twist people were hoping for with Devimon, right? So second, well, fool me twice, but also it would be cool.
yeah, but it's also, I'm just starting to like get flashbacks to what could have been a huge reveal with Machine Dramon
Hmm.
in that Devimon fight if it
Right.
hadn't been telegraphed for so long. So now I'm like, okay, I feel like this is going to be the one card that the show has up its sleeve for an exciting reveal, and it's going to be like, yeah, but you telegraphed it 10 episodes ago, so uh,
And I guess maybe if you're the 9-year-old this show is
yeah,
marketed towards, it's a little bit more forgivable, like a twist on that level of obviousness. Once again, we have hit something where if there were other elements of the show I liked more, I would be more forgiving of this. But because the show has no other redeeming qualities outside of its animation, I am now being harsher on this very silly telegraphing.
yeah, exactly. Like if it weren't the only thing to look for, the only breadcrumbs we had.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, one thing I thought was really it's a tiny little detail, but this is something that's always frustrated me about how Digimon talks about Digimon reviving in most of the seasons, but especially in Adventure and Zero Two. I don't think in Adventure Zero Two they're ever explicit about what happens to Digimon's memories when they die and come back.
Mm-hmm.
Because for some reason there are all these Digimon that die in Adventure that are like these big sad moments that they like never really follow up on in Zero Two. Like Leomon
Yeah.
dies tragically and they never really see him again. And then in Try he's there, but doesn't talk enough for us to actually know if he has his memories or not. And Wizardmon obviously like dies, but then like is stuck as a ghost and keeps his
Ugh.
memories.
I mean, I guess I always just assumed that there was a one-to-one carryover because of when Wormmon comes back,
Oh
but
yeah, Wormmon, yeah.
yeah, Wormmon comes back and like instantly recognizes Ken. So I guess, but does that only apply to partner Digimon? Like there are cool things you could do with the gray zone there.
Yeah, I guess I also forgot about Patamon as well. But those are the
Hmm.
big obvious counterexamples of what I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're right. There's wiggle room there, and it's potentially cool and really sad to think that there might be that disparity of what makes. I mean, if we want it to be a thing that makes partner Digimon different from other ones, that idea that you start fresh, which is both a good thing if you had a really horrible traumatic memory last time, but also sad for the people who remember the person that you were. Like you could do a whole arc with that. That's cool.
So mild spoilers for Try for people who haven't watched Try, but you're reminding me of how Gatomon is like so traumatized by Myotismon
Uh-huh.
and is like separated and like treated totally differently because of that.
It's real bad for her.
Yeah. Imagine if things were reset so that she was on the same playing field as everyone else and didn't have that trauma. Wouldn't that be a cool thing to explore?
Gosh, that does sound like it would be very interesting.
Yeah. Wouldn't it also be cool if that's like completely forgotten about 5 seconds later and then doesn't matter at all?
Wow. My favorite. I love when there are no consequences for interesting plot developments.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a teaser for Try and things to be disappointed about in the potential of
Jeff,
Try.
the only way I'll ever watch Try is if you explicitly say, Vrai, come on a podcast and be angry about Try. Otherwise, no. My backlog is too big.
That's totally fair. What other interesting things happened in this episode? I was kind of disappointed by the name drop of the continent they're on now being Eternal Continent.
Mm.
Uh, First off, because that's kind of like a weird name, like Eternal Continent. Oh, that's kind of weird. And then I realized that what they're saying in Japanese actually, I don't know if it's explicitly a reference, but they're saying Mugen Tairiku. Tairiku's just continent. So, and Mugen is infinity or infinite. So it's like Infinity Mountain, kind
Mm.
of, which was Japanese Mugen as well. So I'm like, oh, it seems like it's kind of a callback to that. And the Crunchyroll translation did not retain that callback. So
The subs are stiff, I feel like. Maybe it's just
mm,
something maybe it's just something I've been noticing in the last couple of weeks, but yeah.
yeah, I don't know if Infinity Continent or Infinite Continent would have been any better, but
I guess it depends on what they're planning to do with it thematically? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Maybe the choice of this translation, they knew what the end goal was for that, and maybe it'll make more sense. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
But all we can do is speculate, so I was gonna say maybe they're held back by an old translation, but that's not a problem in Digimon localization.
yeah. Well, all right. I think
We've sputtered to a stop on this. Well, there was some flashbacks and a lot of. I feel, man, there was definitely a limited animation issue on this episode, which of course there was. They went all out on the really beautiful cut last episode, but
Mhm.
boy, they did not jazz it up with anything else, even interesting storyboards.
Yeah. Like I remember in episode whenever the hot time was before episode 5 or 6 or whatever, I remember some people commenting back then that like, oh, the animation's so bad. I guess that was one of the earliest episodes, so we were still getting used to what to expect. But I remember being so enthralled by the information we were getting that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
care if the animation was bad. And this episode, no, I am not.
Yeah.
You can't wow me with the same information again.
Well, it's not like this show has never had good boards. You know, my annoyances with the script notwithstanding, the Gardemon episode looked really nice despite having minimal movement in a lot of places. So they can do it. Just yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it's not really fair to describe things as just high or low animation budget because there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of artistry involved, and then when you see the lack of artistry, it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
or the Dundevimon episode, honestly. There were
Mm.
some like that shot of Takeru running up the hill. That was gorgeous. Like, completely divorced from everything else that was frustrating the episode was doing. There were some lovely individual shots in there that made me rate the episode higher than I would have if I was just looking at it in terms of how it played into moving the narrative and characters forward. And this just did not have that to prop it up.
Yeah, I think one way this episode works really well, which I don't know if this actually matters, but if you were someone who had tuned out for the past like 15 episodes or something, this would be a really good way to like get a recap and get back into the show.
Yeah, I feel like this will let you skip other parts of the show is not the best recommendation.
Yeah.
But you're also right, and in a way that I respect.
Yeah, like it also doesn't fit into a good point in the show for there to be an explicit recap episode or anything. Like it's not like it changed time slots or like I guess there was a break for a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess maybe that kind of fits well into there being a break for a week, but
And it makes sense to have a breather episode after you do a big reveal of like the first mega evolution, except it's not a
mm,
break because we're still running and fighting. It's just that also while we're running and fighting, exposition is happening. So there
yeah.
isn't really a chance to breathe. It's so weird, Jeff. Why is this show so weird?
Because you can't let things. If you breathe, the kids will turn off the flashy Fortnite device. So this show is competing with Fortnite. The original adventure didn't have that problem. It's all Fortnite's problem. Is Fortnite even popular in Japan? I don't even
I
know.
have no idea, but I would like to know.
Well, anyway, let's get to some through reviews. First off, Yoshiman400 on Reddit said, Koramon's officially irrelevant.
At Drew Softman, plodding along again. That's a good pun.
At First Agent ARP, halfway decent recap.
At Corito Prime, tiny war Greymon claws.
Yeah, I saw a couple people mentioning the tiny claws. I didn't notice them being particularly tiny.
Maybe it's just because there was all that cool foreshortening stuff in the last episode.
And Wargreymon is big. He's a very big boy now. So
Lorge.
yeah. Megajimon22, open the crystal.
At Dot Yawning, unmysterious, mysterious silhouettes.
Speaking of the crystal, I felt so burned because I like the GIF that I posted on Twitter when asking for questions, that the one I tagged you in, like I made that GIF from last week's preview and assumed that was going to be like relevant to this episode, and it turns out like that GIF was the entirety of its like relevance to this episode. It was just Hikari looking at the crystal, and that was it.
Continuing to be spooky and non-vocal.
Yeah. Wait, sorry, you read the last one, right?
Yes, your turn.
Okay, so let's just guess this is Ambue Zone 3, just something else.
At Leo Sketch, late game exposition.
At Paslamon Art, Maildramon flies slow.
At Bored Individual, oops, Omegas.
At Lucas Cucas, War Greymon's already boring.
At Empire Will, Hikari is chosen?
And Congress Womon, Hikari eighth child?
We're all shocked by this development.
Yeah.
So shocking. At CC Takato, Komonodamon is adorable.
At Andy _ mad at Wentz, Komondamons say woo woo woohoo. Is that supposed to be a train noise? I don't know how to do train noises.
Unclear. Woohoo. At CRRMC Ray, big doggy buses. Agreed. I look forward to seeing when they get together at the depot with the cat bus.
Yep, I was gonna say it's basically a cat bus. Oh, I guess they're cat buses, but not quite as cat bus is cute, but also a little bit horrifying.
I mean, the dog buses do have mirrors over their, like, it looks like they're wearing bras, except the bras are front windows. And it's unsettling to me.
I did not notice that. I'll need to dig into these dog buses some more. At Golden Pelt said, Lopmon best boy.
At Joseph Snosif, Lopmon got woke. I don't think that's...
That's not how you use that? At Tokujo, holy exposition, Lopmon.
At JShan26, good. More Lopmon.
Yep. At Happy X2 meeting, the Lopmon lore.
At Gigadramon22, Taichi enters puberty, and then they included a gif of the zoom in on that Anjawamon silhouette.
Yep. I was thinking of that as a joke as I was watching it. I was like, why is Taichi so intrigued by this? And the final one from at Lost in Translation Mon, or I guess their handles is Translation Mon. Anyway, the subtitle's too big because apparently Anime Lab, which is a Crunchyroll-esque site for Australia and New Zealand, messed up the hard-coded subtitles, and the font is just huge for everyone watching this episode on Anime Lab. So sorry, Australia and New Zealand.
We've done it. We've found a video player worse than Funimation. It's happened.
Yeah, the alternative to not displaying subtitles is just display them all just 10x as big. So
no video, only text.
Well, all right, so moving on to some listener questions. So at Joseph Snosif said, do you think Mimi's gemstones are going to have anything to do with Millenniumon's crystal? Grow some Digitama with the positive vibe crystals to fight the darkness.
Again, I did just watch all of School Live, so I would like to put that into practice by living in this better universe that you have imagined, where this will definitely happen, and Mimi will have a lot of amazing friendship adventures with her new crystal friends, and it'll be extremely relevant to the plot and not just a throwaway because we couldn't think of anything to do with her.
Maybe I'm getting my hopes up too much, but could you imagine if like it actually is plot relevant and then like Skull Knightmon drops the crystal and then it gets mixed up with Mimi's crystals and there's just wacky hijinks with this like big bad of the entire season?
Yes, and we can have a big battle, Adventure 2020. You can has your battle snacks, but it will be happening overhead where we can't see it, while all the characters who've been off screen scramble around trying to find the right crystal. I want this show.
Oh, yeah. All right, so at Empire Will said basically that last week they were so frustrated last week having like recreating iconic moments without the weight behind them, but that this one at least tried to do something different. But then they asked, doesn't hiding the forms of the megas seem pointless in the age of the internet? And I would add that not just the age of the internet, but like with this game being so heavily cross-promoted with the card game, which just heavily has all of those mega forms early, like in the starter decks, it's not like a late stage reveal. It's like baked into the DNA of the card game. So,
I mean, I didn't hate it just because I don't follow the card game and I'm, not super involved in the video games, although I did consider picking up Cyber Sleuth a few weeks ago. My Twitter timeline did not give me an encouraging response. So, like, for me, it was kind of fun, and so maybe it could be appealing to a kid who is thinking of getting into things but isn't there yet. And, it's a traditional... I'm a sucker for when anime does that, where they have a character who's in shadow in the opening theme until they properly get revealed, and then I can go, oh, they changed that this time. So,
yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I approve of when shows don't pretend the internet doesn't exist, but at least try to make it so that people who aren't hunting spoilers and might watch this later in isolation can enjoy a little bit of that mystery.
Yeah, I guess it's only weird though in contrast to like how Hikari's been in the opening and the endings,
That's a good
and
point.
where Greymon's been in the opening since episode 1. So it's like, I think the only one that was weird, because I think you raised a really good point that I hadn't considered, that if someone has only watched Adventure or only Adventure in Zero Two, they might not even know the mega forms outside from War Greymon and Metal Garurumon.
Mm.
But so like I think that's good. Like hiding those might be good for that audience. The one that seemed egregious to me was hiding Metal Garurumon.
Yeah, that was a bit silly.
But I guess it makes sense from Taichi's perspective because we only see the ones. Everything's in silhouette that Taichi does not know himself.
Yeah, it's like when the show decided to have character continuity for like a hot second, even though it was probably for marketing reasons. Golf
Yeah,
clap
yeah.
for them.
So Ekigimon22 asked, would you want to see an OVA made of just the Digimon going to war without the kids in their previous lives? Kind of like Evolution, but with this animation, I guess. I think that is an interesting idea. I think it would be a hard thing to sell in general to like have another Digimon only movie or OVA. But I think if we were to do it again after Evolution seemed like it was a huge flop, I think this would be the only cast of characters you could do it with, right? Because it's the most iconic ones.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, if it's the original lives, then they wouldn't be like, they would be stuck in their mega forms the entire runtime, probably.
And it would be bleak, like necessarily quite bleak.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me now about the Breath of the Wild prequel ish game that came out recently, and everyone was expecting to be this like really bleak, grim, dark telling of how the Empire fell, or not Empire, but how the Breath of the Wild Kingdom fell, and it turned out that it's like more of like an alternate timeline where it didn't fall, and then people were like, "Oh, that's a bummer." But
Yeah, people were certainly split on that decision. I think it's kind of interesting, but you know.
yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, but I think people, I don't know if you were to retell this, then it's like, would it be grim, or like I think you could have a victory even if it's like at the cost of defeat or
Right.
whatever, at the cost of some sacrifices. But I think the biggest thing is that I don't know if it would be interesting to have these characters in their Digimon in their mega forms the whole time.
Yeah, and tough to animate too because they're all so big.
Yeah. Next, another question from Gigajimon22, and asking, would introducing Ryo Akiyama really be that much of a detriment to the series at this point? I say no. Let's bring him in and make him 19 years old and been present in the first digital war. Give me Monogramon, time travel, alternate universes, the whole Wonders One experience. And I think like my answer to this is basically just there's nothing fundamentally wrong with Rio or that time hopping or whatever. It's just it needs to be executed well. So like if it were executed well, it'll be fine. But I don't trust this show to execute anything well. So
Right. I was gonna say, heck with it. Yes, in a better world where this was a good remake that do the things that good remakes do. That sounds neat.
Also, like even if it were blundered and not handled well, it's more interesting than what we have at this point, which is just kind of the bare minimum of what we all expected. So anything to shake up that status quo would be exciting, I think. Okay, so next question from Megajimon22. What do you think the chances are of this Millenniumon being a new form? His silhouette looks different to the previous version. No legs, no cannons. Do you think he'll trigger another Dark Evolution in Agumon and steal them? So I think that the silhouette of Millenniumon that we see in the flashback is more close to, if you look up on Wikimon, Zed Millenniumon. But it's not exactly like that. But also, that could just be artistic, stylistic differences. But I assume it's like they're only saying Millenniumon because it's like I don't know, like that was his final form back then, and it's being reborn as a lesser form now. But also, I do think it's weird how the only if you look at Millenniumon base form Millenniumon is a combination of Machinedramon and Chimeramon, and the only thing that's really recognizable about Machinedramon in that base form Millenniumon is the cannons, and the only thing that was missing from Machinedramon in this version when Agumon quote unquote dark evolved into him were the cannons. So that seems like an interesting connection. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but I'm like, maybe cannot. Like, I mean, we all assume that it was like, okay, was it incomplete or like partial evolution or something? But there could be something there. I don't know.
One of those things to continue to be an optimist about, because why not?
Yep. So some bigger questions now. At Creator Prime said, now that we're near the halfway point, if the 66 episode rumor is true, which who knows, but anyway, they say, what is the biggest thing that you're disappointed the show never did that you thought might happen at the start? And they say that for them, episode 2, they were hoping they would get more banter between partner Digimon. I forgot that was even a hope in our eyes back then.
Right. Mine is definitely, I had really, really hoped that the girls would get more to do, or that maybe even they would push it towards a more gender balanced cast. Because
Hmm.
that's because it's been 20 years, and I, old Digimon just has some of those unconscious, really baked in minor sexism things, and that could have been neat if Mimi and Sora and Ikari all got more to do, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, it's like the shows, those like minor little sexist things all got amplified in this version,
Hmm.
I feel. So
Yeah, it's a bummer.
yeah, that would have been such a nice way to modernize it.
They took away the gloves, and we all got really excited. Then that was all that happened.
Yep. I struggled with this question because I was like, throughout the show, there have been so many things that I hoped would happen and have not. I guess the big thing though, early on, is I remember in that, I guess it was like end of episode 1 or episode 2 when Omegamon, it seemed clear Omegamon was going to show up so early on, and I was like, if the show is going to be 50 plus episodes and Omegamon's so early on, what are they even going to do? Oh my god, there's going to be so many interesting things. There's going to be maybe other DNA evolutions. There's potential, there's so much potential for they're going to have to fill this extra runtime with so many interesting things. And it turns out that not only did they rush through the initial evolutions and then just stalled with things that no one really wanted, just have like a solo Tai Chi show for episodes in a row. And yeah, so
Yeah, like even if the main goal of this show is to, show off things for new designs for your card game, surely matching fusion evolution types from other shows with the classic characters everybody has the most nostalgia for would have gotten a lot of mileage just on, I can't think of the word right now. Novelty. There it is. There it is.
mm,
Like the novelty value on that surely would have been enough to propel the show for a while.
yeah, just like have more elements in the mix, maybe more
Hmm.
things you can sell. But
Nope.
I mean, I guess I still have hope that this injects enough lifeblood into the series that there's more, that this isn't the end. Like, doesn't this series does not end, and then it's like, okay, no Digimon for 5 years. But
Yeah.
yeah. And next question from Leo Sketch. At this point, I'm one bad episode away from giving up on the season, so let me ask you this instead. If you were given the director's chair for your own season, which Digimon would be the main lead's partners, and who'd be the ultimate villains? And would you do arcs like previous seasons?
So, like I said, I'm not super familiar with the games or the card game outside of like the super old ones, like from the 90s. But I thought this question was super interesting because at first I was like, well, clearly you would do something with augmented reality and like digital footprints and social media relationships. And then I realized, oh, I have once again invented Deno Coil, a good show that Digimon fans should watch. But I thought, what's really cool about the original adventure series is that as time goes on, it really increasingly leans towards this retrofuturism almost that lets it age really well, where it's just this crystallized image of what people thought the internet was in the 90s. And I feel like instead of going appmon wise towards trying to keep up with modern inventions in technology, it would be really cool to see a Digimon series that is about archival and like the old internet and the constant loss of things and data and relationship and outmoded things as stuff isn't preserved and is constantly replaced by new versions of it, and this sort of crumbling infrastructure. I think you could do a lot of that with that issue in the modern internet, and also the idea of the fact that Digimon are packets of data themselves. And also, I would love to see a Digimon series that played around with the idea of, because I know that Frontier has human Digimon fusions, but I think it would be super cool to see a Digimon series that took place in the digital world and had like some conceptualization of avatars for humans and like adjustability and evolution on that front, because then you could put a trans kid in Digimon because of all the closeted kids I know who like experimented with presentation online first, and that
Mm.
would be good.
So the obvious question I have for that is, have you seen Summer Wars?
Summer Wars is, yeah, I thought it was fine. It was definitely a non-Digimon update of the Digimon movie.
Right. I mean, I only mention that because of the Avatar concept. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
already so close to the concept of Digimon. Like, yeah, you could totally mix that and
imagine what you could do with that with a series in terms of like the kids' personal growth and also like their partner evolution, and there's a lot of room to play with that, and I think it would be cool. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
that I think that maybe taking a break from going forward and going back a little would be good for Digimon right now.
It's interesting, like, now that you frame it that way, like, it's weird how Digimon was this, like, early example of isekai, which has become such a huge genre, the whole being transported to another world genre. And it also was vaguely, it wasn't ever explicitly, but, like, it has similarities to being trapped in an MMO, which is
Mm-hmm.
its own subgenre of isekai that is also very popular now. So it's like, it was kind of on the forefront of those ideas and instead
Mm-hmm.
has kind of never really dug deep enough into them to be like, it's been kind of outmoded by recent stuff that actually goes full in those concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit interesting, but I really like your idea of like it being about like archival history of the internet, because that I think would be such a cool way to, like, what this show seems to be doing of trying to balance the flashy, fun stuff for kids while also still being engaging for the nostalgic older audience.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have it being about like diving into like an old, like unearthing an archive of the old internet as a version of the old digital world or something, then you can pull in kids who just find it flashy and new, and adults who see things they recognize, and it's like evokes that nostalgia from that age. So that's a really cool idea. I don't have a good idea myself in terms of like lead partners and like what the villain would be. Cause I think like we were talking about like Rio and stuff, like all that matters is the execution. It's not like you can come up with the coolest idea for a digital world and for Digimon as a concept, but if it is barely, if there's barely any writing behind it, then it'll always fall apart. So I do think the one thing that I always want out of a Digimon season is like a villain that actually like is a thread you can that runs through the actual season, unlike Adventure where it's like, oh, you beat Digimon, okay. Oh, actually, there's another one. Oh, actually, there's another one. Oh, actually, there's
Mm-hmm.
another one. Like, at least, like, I really like this framing of Zero Two, where it's like there is a thread you can pull. You can pull the thread of the Digimon Emperor and eventually end up to the end of the season. And I think that's a much better framing.
Mm-hmm.
That this season, who knows? It seems like there's some connection between Devimon and the stuff going on now.
Like, I guess it's the crystal stuff, but
And
eh.
yeah, that's the other thing. Like, I guess there is that through line, but still not executed well. So, yeah.
Well,
And I guess in terms of like lead partners, like I'm tired of Agumon. Like Agumon's fine as a mascot, but like I want like a cuter mascot, like a Terriermon kind of Digimon, like that level of cuteness, but as the main Digimon, not just a side Digimon.
mm.
The final question, the most important question from friend of the show at the Modern Gaffa: what's keeping you going?
Every so often, Jeff will send me a DM like that says, "Do you want to record an episode of the podcast?" And I said, "Yeah, Jeff, I do. This is a really fun time." And then I catch up on the Digimon I haven't been watching.
Uh, this is such a hard question for me to think about because it's like we were talking about the sunk cost fallacy of reading long running shonen manga or shonen anime. It's kind of like that with like running a podcast. It's like I think it'd have to be really bad for me to pull the plug on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But so part of it is just that doing the podcast is fun and rewarding, and I feel like there's like producing content, seeing people enjoying it, like seeing people react to it gives me some lifeblood. But I think it's also, even if I weren't doing the podcast at all, I enjoy that there is like a community of people talking about the show and listen. Like I'm a sucker for companion podcasts. Like I think even if I weren't producing one for this season, I would be listening to other podcasts like the With Will podcast and Lost in Translation on talking about each episode. I guess that's also like I've always wanted to do a companion like week by week podcast along with the show and never really had quite the opportunity. So it's like this is something that like I know when the season first started, I was like, I don't know if it's gonna be good. But then I had memories to when Try was on the horizon and I had ambitions to do a weekly podcast for that when we thought it was going to be a show, not a movie series.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, this is my final chance to do it. So I really should try it. And as like exhausting as the show itself is, I think it's still the experience of doing a podcast is rewarding. But if there were no podcast, yeah, I think there's still. It's like I think I'm in the fandom enough that it's like a rewarding experience to watch once a week. But
Yeah, it's a reason to keep meeting up with all these people you enjoy talking about a franchise you like about. Even if the newest one isn't good, it is a new reason to collectively bemoan it. Again, I do like Interview with the Vampire. I do understand this emotion.
yeah, like it does make me think about like all these amazing new shows that are coming out that I don't have time to watch.
Mm.
But like once a week, it doesn't feel like that big of a commitment, and it feels like the show is like occasionally buzzworthy enough. Like when the War Greymon Evolution premiered last week, I saw people who don't normally watch the show who were like, "Wow, this animation is so flashy and so amazing." So like it seems like it occasionally bubbles up to relevancy. So I'm glad that I'm on the train talking about it when that happens. But so I guess especially seeing the Digimon card game and seeing a lot of creators popping up, like content creators on YouTube and stuff, there's like so many people racing to try to like make their name making content about the Digimon card game. And
Mm.
I'm just like exhausted even trying to like watch or listen to any of them. So like I kind of appreciate how this show is not the biggest thing ever, and then there's not like a huge race towards like everyone trying to cover it.
Yeah.
So it feels nice and chill at this point. So
Indeed.
long rambly thoughts. Anyway, I think we've gotten a lot out of this mediocre fluff of an episode. But if you had to rate this episode out of 5 giant doggy buses, how would you rate it?
Maybe 2.5. There were a couple okay individual scenes, but it was not good on the whole.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it 2 stars. Sorry, not 2 stars. Sorry, 2 giant doggy buses out of 5 giant doggy buses because I really think the giant doggy buses are the only redeemable thing about the episode.
Mm.
And aside from that, it was just like subpar in every way. And but at
Yeah.
least I feel like looking back on it later on, I won't. Looking back at some of the episodes, was it 2 weeks ago? The one before War Gremlin's Evolution. Looking back, I'm like, why was that even there? That feels like it was just the pad time.
Mm-hmm.
At least this one feels like there is a purpose and it will be memorable.
Because we committed to 66 episodes.
Yeah, which at this point, like, since that's still a rumor, I wonder, like, if we got to episode 45 and we found out it was ending in 5 episodes instead of, like in 20, I wonder if that would be like a good thing or a negative thing. Would we be excited for it to end soon or like bummed that it's ending so soon? I don't know.
Hard to say.
Yeah, hard to say. But anyway, who would be your MVP for this episode?
I was gonna say Skull Nightmon for providing the only barest glimpse of what might be intrigue, but I'll give it to the doggy buses. They're very cute and good. They're good dogs.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it would feel a little unfair for like a head tilt to be an entire reason for someone to get MVP, but also that head tilt did more work than like anyone else this episode. So
Yep.
yeah, so good job, Commandomon. I can still never pronounce that name, but
Yeah, doggy buses.
doggy buses. So next week is titled. So next week, episode 32, Soaring Hope. Seems like. So they say the little hero Takeru and Patamon dash through the Great Plains. It seems like they get on the Commandomon are being attacked by something. We see Takeru defending Sora, which is great.
Magna Angemon, I assume.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Because we're doing that again. It's just Ultimates 2, Mega Boogaloo.
So of the characters we see and think of the episode, there's going to be the Commandomon, there's going to be Patamon, maybe Magna Angemon, and some angry dog thing that's shooting at them. Which of these 4 characters do you think are going to talk?
Well, sure, let's break franchise tradition and give Magna Angemon too many lines now.
He just becomes too talkative, like...
Yes.
Just very chatty.
It's managed to predict everything that fans don't want, like 90% of the time, so it seems good.
Yeah, I totally forgot how like he's barely talked since he got revived, but maybe I could see that if he gets back to like some form that revives some of his power and then has some more things to say. But yeah, I don't see anyone else. The Commandamon aren't talking. The angry dog thing's not going to talk.
No.
So
enemy Digimon don't talk because then we might have to think about them as characters. There's no time for that.
No ethics. No time for ethics.
Mm-mm.
Digimon Adventure 2020, no time for ethics. All right, so that brings us to the end of the show. Last week's Digiprompt was in honor of the Parrotmon vs. Greymon revenge match. What iconic Digimon showdown would you want to see with upgraded forms in a new Digimon anime? And my favorite response came in from @AndyMadAtWentz on Twitter, who said Magnamon versus Chimeramon. The fight already had some of the best animation in Zero Two, lasting through walls, the highest holes, Wormmon the Kaiser, so up it with Magnumon X versus Millenniumon, with Magnumon X being one of the holy Digimon. Magnumon could die and then respawn later for Davis in Zero Two. Which I think that last bit is being a little bit too ambitious, but I do like the idea.
Yeah, no, I'm into that.
Yeah, so this week's Digiprompt is, in honor of the Commandomon fleet, if you had to be saved by a fleet of giant Digimon, what kind of giant animal, aside from a dog, would you want them to be based on? You can send your Digiprompt responses and general feedback to potages@gmail.com, to potages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on our website, potages.com. If this is your first episode, make sure you subscribe wherever you find podcasts. Share the podcast with your friends who forget that you're friends until you've evolved to Mega and now suddenly act like you're best friends the whole time. And please review an Apple Podcasts. It's really important for growing the podcast and is the best way to support the show. I am Jeffly Jeff on Twitter, and you can also check out my general anime podcast, Love It or Weebit. What did we release recently? Episodes on Jujutsu Kaisen and, oh god, I don't even remember now because I recorded them a while back. Anyway, we're going through the last anime season, and there were some good things there. So check that out. So, Vrai, where can people follow you in the digital world?
You can find my general Twitter @WriterVry, where I post the stuff I freelance for and AniFem stuff. Or you can find the podcast I co-host with my wife @TrashPod, where we talk about bad books and Smallville and trashy movies that we love anyway.
Nice. So, thank you so much for coming on. This was a fun time catching up on...
Again, I genuinely have a great time talking about this bad show with you. I apologize, listeners, if I was too much of a buzzkill.
No, I think the vibe I get is that all of our buzzes have been killed, so we're all in this together, as the iconic saying goes.
See, and that's adorable and heartwarming. I love when people are all despairing over a bad thing together. It's a very unique experience. It's heartening.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening, and I'll be back with another guest next week to talk about episode 32, Soaring Hope. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And remember, never stop Digimon.
The network was being attacked.
I just killed the conversation.
It's fine. We need to get an ultimate Digimon that's a boy to fix your texting situation.
Yeah, because female characters can't be relevant. So.
Yeah, I was watching that new episode that new anime by the guy who does who wrote the scripts for Gurren and Promare, and it's full on that thing of look at all these interesting female characters and they're cool, and when the actual really important stakes come up, they will sit down on the sidelines so that the himbos can do all of the punching.
Oh no. Which show is that, by the way?
Back Arrow.
Oh.
Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, that's a bum. Because I'd seen screenshots of like that naked or shirtless guy, and I was like, that looks good, but
I mean, like it is very much in that dude's whole thing. Like if that is a thing you're cool with, it was a fun, very 90s feeling fantasy series with mecha battles. It's one of those things that like I'll probably drop, not because I dislike it, but just because I'm watching too many other things.
At least it feels like most people on the internet have like come to understand how sexist that kind of stuff is. Like, I'm just having flashbacks to whenever it was the Lego movie came out, like 2014 or so, or 2013 or something, where like no one could understand that it was like sexist, and I'm like, how? It's just doing the Trinity this Trinity scenario from The Matrix.
But Trinity does a lot of cool punching before Neo does everything.
Yeah, so it's good.
Mm-hmm. The Trinity problem is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least you will see more aware of that nowadays. So.
Yeah, that's something. Poor Sora. Poor Sora.
I guess the rating hasn't changed in the world, but the people recognizing it a little.
Kind of. But, we're working on it. Also, by the way, out of nowhere, but you are correct, and Demons Are Digimon is a correct take. As somebody who read his Dark Materials as a child, it's a correct take.
Did you read it? I assume you read it after Digimon, right? After you saw Digimon?
Yeah, because I didn't read them until like middle school, early high school, and I watched Digimon in grade school. I don't know that
Mm.
I made the connection explicitly at the time, but you are correct.
Yeah, it's disappointing to try to like try to graft on a framing of Digimon as metaphorical reflections of the kid's personality,
Hmm.
and to have it never fit perfectly, and then see his Dark Materials and be like, oh, they did it perfectly there already. So
Well, it's because Digimon is also for kids who wanted a dog. Like the platonic ideal of what it's like to have the perfect pet who goes on adventures with you and always understands you and also isn't a problem when they're not convenient. Absolutely. Absolutely the perfect imagination of kids who read Kid and Their Dog adventures.
yeah. I mean, it seems like Demons and his Dark Material have that same vibe too, where it's like imagine you had a lifetime companion.
Who will always talk to you and understands all your stuff, and it's a whole thing. Oh yeah.
How do you feel about the heteronormative gender norms of demons, though?
I think that Philip Pullman is a out of touch old white man.
Mm,
No, yeah, like I feel like he was less shitty than certain other children's
oh yeah,
authors I could
yeah.
name, where there were things like at one point somebody brought up that maybe having a demon that was your same gender meant you were gay, and I don't know if anybody has informed him that trans people exist, but
I don't know if I don't know if people have embraced the idea that isn't it on some level anti-heteronormative to imply that every person has multiple genders inside their personality? But I don't know. It seems like he
yeah.
is wholly uninformed in exploring the idea. So
It's one of those things that is best taken over by fandom. The
mm,
actual text has some rigidity on that front, but then I've got my problems with his Dark Materials in terms of how it benches Lyra in the back half anyway, and then decides to be an antidote to C.S. Lewis's Christian tracks in the Narnia books by doing the exact same unsubtle, very boring didactic tracks, but for atheism instead. I will combat this thing by doing exactly the same poor storytelling form, but my way this
mm.
time.
Okay, so the spoilers, the okay, so from now on we're going to be talking about spoilers for the
Mm.
episode 33 to 35 episode titles. So if you don't want to know what those are, you can check out now. But okay, Fry, you looked at them before, right?
Yeah, I eyeballed them quickly when you sent them over.
So I guess it might not be clear from the tweet. I guess maybe I should have mentioned the episode. But anyway, Soaring Hope is apparently the name of Pegasus Mon in Zero Two, like when they announced their title.
Mm.
So that's a kind of cute reference.
Yeah, no, that's nice. We're remembering Zero Two exists. That always makes me happy.
But yeah, then episode 33 is The Light of Dawn, which is supposed to be really clever because light is Hikari in Japanese and it's using Hikari. And then episode 34 is Hikari and Tailmon, which they use the same, they write Hikari in katakana for both of those.
Mm.
So who knows if, technically episode 33 might be translated as the Hikari of Dawn. Who knows? But, and then 35 is Sparkly Angelomon, which apparently was the name of the episode in the original adventure when Angelomon appears. How do you feel about them?
I mean, it'll be nice if Hikari suddenly grows a personality. Oh, to be fair, I actually really liked the micro scene where she pats Agumon on the head. I thought that was cute. But other than that, she's just been full creepy child. So if that she's just going to continue to do that with Gatomon, then And also, I'm sad that we're speed running an entire arc apparently to get to that evolution. But also, yay! I am actually genuinely excited to see Tailmon.
I'm bummed that it's still so much focus on Taichi, and then it's I guess Padamon's gonna show up next episode and then evolve, and then I guess next episode Hikari's gonna show up and then evolve, and then okay, I guess there's a couple episodes in between. It seems.
Yeah,
But
a
still.
3 episode arc for Hikari is decadent by the show's standards.
That's true. It's too indulgent.
Imagine if they had a whole episode of them just hanging out and getting to know each other as characters. Can you imagine?
And I mean, an episode about a female character.
Not on 2020's watch.
uh,
No, but
yeah.
that'll get me through, a couple more. I can be sad in new ways where my hope sputtered to life again for a few minutes.
Do you think there's any? I think we talked about this off mic before we started recording about how like it seems like Skull Knightmon is angling to be the Wizardmon analog. Do you have any feelings about that?
I mean, I would rather they do that than try to bring Wizardmon into this mess proper. But I guess it would fit this show's MO. Like, we already saw them do the really big, impactful Angemon death with absolutely no build-up, because look at that thing. You remember that thing? So I wouldn't be surprised if they did that shot exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Like, it might also not happen, but it's completely believable.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to square though, like because we don't know if Skull Knightmon's going to be the Wizardmon analog or it's going to be literally be Tailmon.
I guess, like, the coolest way that they could do it is if, for some reason, Skull Knightmon decides, with no prior build-up, that he's going to defend this child with his life, and killing him lets Tailmon pop out of wherever she has been imprisoned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that would be something.
Yeah, it would be something. But I'm just imagining, like, you can't have Wizardmon in the original show without Wizardmon ever talking. He needs to talk. Like, that's his. Yeah.
He needs to be your sad, drunk older brother. That's what I love about him.
That was hot sauce, not alcohol. Totally.
Excuse me.
Totally hot sauce.
Dizzy. He was dizzy.
Blushing from hot sauce in the desert. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, finally, on the standards of this show, I'm excited to see it, but, like, it won't be good.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Like, I guess it's nice to see that focus start to shift towards those things that we care about, but not getting our hopes up too much.
I will look forward to hearing the podcast episodes about those episodes. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that Angemon gets a good animation sequence that isn't too boobtastic. That's really all I ask.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hope this... It would be really frustrating if the show is so marketed towards kids that it like doesn't focus on any character development, but then it also throws in gratuitous fan service. That would be very frustrating. Mm-hmm. So I hope it at least like stays on the side of not being or mainly being for kids and not being skeevy. Mm-hmm. Please don't be skeevy.
Please. Yeah. It's so little to ask. Please.